Chapter 84 The Downfall of Falmus Kingdom. On that day, the world fell into terror once again. The revival of Storm Dragon Veldora was confirmed. This information was quickly passed on to the countries under the influence of the Western Saints' Church. The kings of each country, once again tried to rack their brains for countermeasures against Storm Dragon Veldora. However, there was a country that had a more pressing issue. Falmus Kingdom, inside the audience room of the royal castle. On a certain morning, suddenly in the middle of the throne, something was left on it. That thing was a lump of flesh. On that lump of flesh, a face was embedded on the center. It was that of the king's. He's still alive. Although he had a hollow gaze, he seems to still retain some small vestige of his consciousness. The soldier who went to patrol in the morning noticed a groaning sound. That's when he found him. Although the soldiers that served in the royal palace were elite imperial guards, they can't stop letting out scream in fear after seeing the body. Such disgusting appearance, it's inevitable if they did not realize that the thing they found was the king they served. However, the lesser cabinet minister who rushed after hearing the soldiers scream recognized that it was their king, which had complete change in his appearance. And then, there must be a bottle under me, please let me drink it, understanding the words of the king, who repeats the word. After listening to the king's story, the ministers became silent. The content was unbelievable and was too much for them at that time. King, we will ask once more. Did everyone really died? If it wasn't a complete defeat, and if the survivor are not rooted, then they are really dead? Isn't the supple corps stationed at the rear? Are they safe? The king shook his head weakly. Such an appearance made everyone understand whether they accept this or not. Everyone in the expedition was dead. One of the ministers broke down in tears after hearing the confirmation. The minister who asked about the safety of the supple corps had sent off his own son for his first participation in a war. He made some arrangements beforehand to make sure his son would not be stationed at the front where it was dangerous but at the rear. But all of it was useless. In the first place, everyone thought that they would be victorious in this war. So he was sent to participate in his first campaign. The feeling of imminent victory he held at that time, you once again gather the nobles, and continue the war against our country. If you take this choice, at that time your life will really come to an end. Although you might be liberated from the suffering of this world, you can protect your pride to the end. The citizens would starve, and the war will continue for a long time. You're free to choose any of the options. Make sure you tell the messenger in a week. Think about your answer carefully. With a lovely smile on its beautiful girly face, she stated it while smiling kindly. A truly terrifying demon lord. Just by reciting the words, his entire being filled with fear. To oppose such person, he never dared to even think about it again. His fear outweighed his pride as a king. He no longer held any desire to oppose that person. Turning him into a lump of flesh, every day he was made to eat his own appendages. He wholeheartedly never wanted to taste such fear ever again, but he needed to listen to the minister's words. Unbelievable. Already broken and is already gone. Like hell I want to taste such fear again. I won't permit such madness. If you still want to go to war, you bastards can go to war, I won't stop it. In the case that we can't trust the monsters, so what? To submit? Or to go to war? Is it a good idea? I will not go to war. It's already too late, we can only surrender. This is enough, this is already satisfactory. The demon lord had already declared. If you say it was for the sake of the country, I think it's stupid to not consider the state of affair in the enemy country. If you change the state of relationship with them, perhaps they can become a good neighbor. Like that. I was warned by the monster. If I listened to what Marquis Muller and Count Herman had said, this situation would never have occurred. It was my own desire, not for the sake of the citizens, but for myself. There is no second chance. There is none. If I make a mistake in choosing the option, not only me but this country would inevitably perish. What should be done to make the situation better? What should be done for the happiness of the citizens? The discussion between the king and the ministers continued without end. Obligatory line of slow proofreading, wahahaha, it's moving slowly. 3 days passed. The nobles has assembled and the imperial conference was held. Different from the previous one, there were no composure in the king and ministers' expressions, only seriousness. The nobles felt the difference in the atmosphere and tension was showing on their faces. The nobles were informed about the king's story. Hearing that speech, the nobles were thrown into chaos. This country was defeated by the monster's country Tempest. Therefore, to take the responsibility, I will abdicate from the throne. Due to the explosive statements that were spoken by the king, the conference became complicated. The disastrous fate of the subjugation army was announced by their minister. The unbelievable content was the only survivor. Were not completely unjustified. However, the nobles had forgotten. The opponent was a demon lord who can crush an army by herself. Or rather, perhaps they did not want to believe it. When that matter was pointed out, there are some who turned pale, but there are some who act impudently too. Just like what King Edomalis had been worried, the nobles didn't reach any conclusion and the conference was in utter chaos. King, even if you abdicated, you cannot escape from taking responsibility. In the first place, did you think you can escape only by yourself? If this one did not abdicate, then I will receive that demon lord's wrath. Is that fine with you? Moreover, if this one don't abdicate and keep governing, there is no other choice than to become a vassal state. Are you prepared for that? However, to unconditionally surrender to that monster is. He kept repeating such exchange many times. The ministers looked at this situation and remembered their previous conversation with the king. Their face became itself. It was obvious that they never cared for the lives and properties of the citizens. In the end, the conference ended without reaching any agreement. It was going just like the prediction of Rimuru, or rather, Wisdom King Raphael. Civil war erupted in Falmus' kingdom between the king's faction and the nobles' faction. The result was the downfall of Falmus' kingdom. Henceforth, it was passed down on the later generation as a country that was destroyed because of the demon lord's wrath. Said that at the time there came a single youth from the domain of Count Nidolmaidam. This man would be known as a new hero. As he went, he gathered volunteers to protect the citizens' properties and fought against the greed of the noble class. Those who were quick of wit, as well as those who were prudent, chose to join the side of this youth early on in his quest. The name of this youth was Yumu. Yumu was the commander of the frontier garrison, and as such, quickly gained popularity with villagers and peasants alike. Especially in the outlying villages that were under threat from monster raids. The man himself was very charismatic, and in the blink of an eye, his power and influence had expanded greatly. From the words of those villages were the words that would describe him, the invincible, undefeated, always victorious. These led to rumors about this man. The disunited noble armies were too few and too scattered to oppose him, and as he went on, he began to show his overwhelming power. Not only was this young man, Yumu, Edgar, was still a boy, yet he played an active role as Yumu's personal staff officer. His father King Edomalis, however, was executed at the time of his abdication. The story of the former king's execution had become popular ghost talk as of late. At the time the guillotine blade fell upon him, a young girl's laugh could be heard reverberating at the scene. Then, as if by an otherworldly force, the head and body began to float in midair and vanished into the far horizon. Certainly it could not be a mass hallucination. The proof for this was the pool of blood that was left behind after the corpse vanished out of sight. Though this part of the story would be made to vanish from the chronicles of history, to fade into the depths of the void. Although in the ages to come such a subject would come to controversy and theory, there was evidence that claimed Marius, the hero King Yumu's right-hand man, possessed a spitting image of the former King Edomalis. Though by that point, there was no nobleman that could judge the authenticity of such a claim. In just 2 years, the young hero King Yumu the Great had completed his noble quest, and succeeded in uniting the scattered territories of the former falmus kingdom. This was only made possible through the noble efforts of the dwarf and Burman kingdoms. This sole factor would be known as the greatest peace that led to the successful unification. However, even beyond this was a peace that shocked the country. That was the non-aggression treaty that was bestowed upon the noble hero King Yumu by the great demon lord, Rimuru Tempest, a member of the mighty 8-star demon lords. In the end, this treaty was used as a pretext as securing post-war investments and indemnity in support of Yumu. The signing of the non-aggression pact between the great demon lord, Rimuru Tempest, and the hero King Yumu signified the end of a war that brought terror to the peoples of the kingdom. The fear of a demon lord's wrath and terror, capable of causing an entire army to vanish without a fight. While it isn't spoken, this pact also served to establish the legitimacy of the young hero king. With the former king dead and the hero king taking the throne with justice as his witness, a friendship was said to have been born between the hero King Yumu and the great demon lord, Rimuru Tempest. With the support of these mighty countries, a new country was born. This country's name would come to be known as. The meaning of the name was a country born through the greatest peril. Yumu formally assumed the position as the founding king, changing his name from Yumu to Falmus. By his side were 2 mighty devils, as well as his trusted staff officer and wise political advisor. Though the latter's history is faded into obscurity, the hero king had surrounded himself with skilled and wise individuals of unquestionable loyalty and grace. With the trust of his companions as his guide, Yumu thus set out on his road as a hero king of the country of the new era. Against such turbulent era, the progress of history does not stop.